welcome back to Unarmored Talk podcast. I'm still your host, Mario P. Fields. And today, in a few minutes, I'll have another guest coming on the show, willing to remove their armor to help people develop an accurate way of thinking. You guys know the deal. All of us that were born as humans, we are born with emotions. But to think, unless you're insane, is a choice. Before we get to our amazing guest, again, thank you, everyone, as we rapidly approach 5 years in production. But the biggest part of this Unarmored Talk podcast and my YouTube channel and all the social media content that's created with the help of amazing guests and amazing fans like you all. If you listen, if you're a listener, or you watched the video on the YouTube channel, is all of the money raised in the last 5+ years for Still Serving Incorporated. Again, I think by 2026, I'll get that button. I'll raise enough money to get one of those special buttons. And so thank you so much. Over 30, almost approaching $40,000 that have been donated to students in Pitt County, the two schools we've adopted, and also the money raised on the audio and video from Unarmored Talk podcast. So again, thank you, everyone. But today we have Matthew Kemp. He is a United States military veteran. The branch of service was United States Army. He went from, check it out, everyone, infantry squad leader, the infantry, to academics. He went to college right after the infantry. What a transition. And then from there, he went to corporate United States of America. We'll just say global environment. Corporate America, we'll use that metaphor. And then from there, he became an entrepreneur and a business owner. You guys know the deal. They are fundamentally different. But you're looking at Matt, who's achieving this entrepreneurship and business owner all in one. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, I am honored. And what you guys don't know is last time with him and I had a discovery meeting before I got off, I said, go Navy.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you. Well, can you do me a favor? Tell the listeners and viewers just a little bit about Matt Kemp.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Montana. There were two ways out of that small town. One was either college and the other one was the infantry. So I took what I thought was the path of least resistance at that time. Turns out that infantry was a little bit tougher than college. So joined in 2002, did 2 tours, got out in 2008. And then from there, like a lot of folks had that crossroads of like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Traveled for a little bit, realized that I needed to, channel something. I was just kind of working odd jobs here and there, and then decided that college and, kind of the marketing and advertising industry is what I wanted to do. I look back at who I thought I was, at 18, and then at, 21 after my first deployment and 24 after my second deployment. It's like you change a lot in such a short amount of time. But you really don't notice until you look in hindsight. So, I was in the corporate world for about a decade. And then right before I turned 40, I realized that I never wanted to make a cold call again. I never wanted to be on the cusp of another layoff again. I never wanted to be out of control of, my family's financial well-being. And whenever I look back through my career in, sales, advertising, marketing, corporate staffing, working for, large conglomerates, I realized that you're not in control of any of that. So that's kind of my character arc coming into entrepreneurship from whenever I started my corporate staffing firm early last year. Probably one of the worst economic climates for that industry there. But I'm a baptism by fire type of guy. And then, through the success and, the progress that I've made with that, that's fired up a veteran assistance and strategy firm to kind of help other veteran small business owners follow my playbook a little bit so they can go that path of least resistance.
Yeah, and a lot of times, Matt, I will get a lot of questions from service members throughout all branches of service that have served in combat arms or the infantry, and a lot of times. Oftentimes they believe that they don't have transferable skills. Did you find that you're suffering? I mean, I'm sorry, serving in the infantry.
Right.
actually
Synonymous.
created some some transferable skills that you're using today.
Absolutely. But on back then, and I say back then, early
Mhm.
2000s, late, early 2010s, that was a retention strategy of some senior leadership. They would give us the stats on, only 10% of veterans that get out and go to college actually graduate, 2% if you're infantry. Those numbers are probably wildly off, but I I look back at all that type of top-down communication to foster reenlistment, to get folks to stay in. We have a deployment schedule coming up. So sometimes you end up leaving not knowing what that potential that you have is. So I took the inverse of that and I said, I'm going to be part of, the 2% of infantry guys that get out and go to college. And then once I got there, started to talk to a whole bunch of infantry guys that were also in college who were on track to graduate. And it's just like, hey, I think those numbers were a little off. So I think the big takeaway is, don't sell yourself short just because somebody says you're not going to be able to do this or the stats aren't in your favor. Same thing with small business. I mean, you could look at the stats. It's not great. Same thing with marriage. You could look at the stats and take a negative outlook on it. But as long as you say no matter what the odds are, even if they're just a little bit in my favor, use that to your advantage. Harness that. Be a part of the 2%. And then once you get in there, you're like, oh, well, I'm part of the 30% or 50%.
Matt said they said only 0.0000% will make it. Matt said,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm that point
Mhm.
0.000%." And I love the of course I am short, so I literally can't sell myself short. But like like Matt said, um, if someone says only 1-2%, then you know what? Be that 2%. And I love how you made that choice. Were there any times during your journey where you said, okay, what am I doing? Is this right for me? What is right?
Yeah, number of times. I'm still going through that right now as a owner of two businesses. So I graduated college whenever I was 29. I started whenever I was 27. As we know, GI Bill covers you for 36 months. I said I can't get out of college with student debt, so I had to burn through it. Full class load, full
Mm,
summers,
wow.
two years and 10 months. Got a degree in mass comm advertising. So that's all great, but I was then a 30-year-old intern at an ad agency. That comes with some challenges going from 3 years before that, doing multi-unit raids in West Baghdad to now all of a sudden, you're going to get stuff, you're putting stuff in the copier, and like that's your whole existence. So it's it was a less numerous times in my career I had to look at the short-sighted challenges versus the long-term goals. And I always thought of career progression and things like that. But it all even fared me well once I started up my own business to where I now still can look at the long-term, short-term challenges, long-term payoff. I mean, stuff happens daily to where, it's very easy on your journey to throw your hands up and you know, not really quit, but not be optimistic about what your route is. I think we talked about this last time. It's like starting a road march with not knowing where your turnaround point is or where your end point is. It's just going to suck right from the start. And why give yourself the added emotional trauma of just trying to do great things whenever you can lean on somebody to say, hey, here's your turnaround point or here's your end point.
Yeah.
So it's something that happened consistently throughout my career, but also now that I'm in charge of my own career, it still hasn't stopped.
And then let's talk about that. A lot of times you hear, for me, I hear, here's the challenges, here's the statistics of becoming a small business owner, and the challenges and the barriers, but let's talk about the flip side of that. What are some advantages, Matt, that you have experienced now that you pretty much, can control your priorities within time and space?
It's a lot of growth as a person. That's kind of the the intangible there because it's no one's fault but yours if things completely hit the fan. But it's up to you to make it right, to fix it, to get things back on track. So the confidence behind the scenes whenever you're doing great is something that you're not going to get unless it's something you built yourself. Now, the antithesis of that, things start falling apart. Then you just got to look in the mirror and be like, what are we doing? We got to figure it out. Like, let's get this stuff going. Um, and then also, with the way things in the economy have gone, things have been so crazy, during COVID, post COVID, there's been a ton of layoffs. Like I will never be subject to another layoff again in my life. I don't have to, if somebody else gets an office or some world event happens or some, like, how is this going to affect the market? Is my, all of these what ifs that could be out there, that there's never going to be anybody who's in charge of my paycheck to just say, hey, sorry, it's about the numbers, and then chop it off. Now, again, that there's a risk versus reward there. I don't have the guaranteed, W-2 paycheck, but therein lies more risk. So this is the long answer to your short question. There's a number of things, but I think just having that, once you get comfortable with that control, there's some secondary and tertiary effects of that in such a positive way.
Yeah, and like that clarity, like you mentioned, where okay, you're not a W-2 employee. By the way, you're in Montana. That's the only non at will employment.
Right. Well, that's where I grew up. I'm currently in Austin, Texas. So
Yeah, yeah. You
that's
were
like
born in.
where,
As
yeah,
soon as you said Montana, I thought about at will employment. But
right. Yeah.
but but how and I love how you talked about the clarity it's provided. Yeah, there's some other unknowns, but how important was your network? And that could be family, friends, a coach, when you made this decision to leave corporate America and become, a business owner.
It became increasingly more aware that, some of my best friends for the past 5 to 10 years have owned their own businesses. And it had never been on my radar that I wanted to do that because, I worked at an advertising firm. I didn't want to start my own ad agency. That's not something I was passionate about or, wanted to deal with. And then whenever I got into corporate staffing, like it took 2 years of really getting into the operations to look at my net. Like, my buddies just kept asking me, when are you going to start your own shop? It seems like it just kind of makes sense. And then finally it just clicked. So I then I was looking through the lens of a business owner at that point to look at my network. And I was like, holy cow, I actually know a lot of folks that are really good in finance, really good at, raising capital, really good, all of these things that they're really great at, like operations experts, that I was like, okay, now I can start asking these folks for help, because I never needed their help from a business standpoint, because we were,
Mm-hmm.
in different industries or, things like that. So now that I was just in the same realm as a business owner, like, we have payroll vendor talks and, insurance cost discussions. And, it didn't change the friendship, but we were just changing the conversation. So now, once I started my business, I wanted to lean into all types of mentorship, all types of education, B2B networking groups. So then I'm talking to other business to business owners that are having the same challenges with the downturn market, or how are they navigating different sales funnels, and just all, stuff that you can nerd out on. But it's tough to have those conversations with, my wife, who's not an entrepreneur. She's a nurse. She's very risk averse, by nature and by job. So whenever I talk about, I think I'm going to try this thing out, she's, it's not in her DNA for that. So being able to then look through the lens of a business owner and think, wow, I got a lot of resources, that I can pull from. And then in turn, kind of the give back. I've made a lot of mistakes in the last year and a half. Let me share those with other
Mm-hmm.
folks. They know you could lose a client if you don't have workers' comp coverage over here, or you can got to make sure that your funding is in order to do this payroll. And, it's having a give and get mentality has been really beneficial for, kind of that short-term growth with the long-term benefits.
I love your approach, everyone. If you guys didn't catch it, I'll say it again. Um, give and receive. It's a reciprocating relationship. The power of a network. Like Matt said. I mean, he doesn't look like he's in his 40s. Everyone, there's hope for me. I'll be 89 next year. No, I'm just joking. But and it's never too late. Again, he did about 8 years in the military. About 10 years in corporate America. And like you said, I graduated college at 29, almost 30. It's never too late to pursue what you believe is best for you, your family, doing research and leveraging that network, Matt. And I really appreciate you doing that, because I mean, you've done a lot for the veteran community and more. Hell, just being an example, and especially from folks who served or currently serving in combat arms. Looking back, or any branch of service for that matter, but looking back, if you had to give yourself a piece of advice when you got out of the military, what would you give yourself?
Funny, whenever I think back on the advice that I actually got, which was go to college, don't hit the booze too hard, like that was the advice that I got. So then whenever folks come to me, or I get posed with this question, it's a million things race through my head, because it's one, leverage all of your resources, make attainable goals. Some type of education is probably going to have an ROI to it, whether you do trades, whether you do associates, whether trade and get the 4-year, like whatever it is, there's probably going to be a little bit of an ROI there, but just think more long-term, because I thought so short-term all the way up until my first son was born. Once he was born, it was now not just about me, not just about what I wanted to do, I never planned more than 3 months in advance. I just think back, man, if I would have just saved a little bit of deployment money for the down payment on a house in 2008, that would have been a little bit different financial situation than, buying my house in 2018. So I know it's tough to tell somebody who just made the transition to the civilian world have long-term goals that are, obtainable and executable on, but that would be it. Probably wouldn't have listened to myself back then anyway, but like that's the biggest takeaway was just like, man, just have a little bit of long-term planning, because I didn't essentially start long-term planning until 10 years after I got out of the military. So now, granted, I'm not saying that was lost time or wasted time, but man, if I could go back, to 2008, I think we'd make some different financial decisions. I think we might have, streamlined some things. But yeah, it's just do what's right for yourself, but just know that there's still going to be a you 10 years from now. There's still going to be a you 20 years from now. So like, don't screw that guy over. So,
I like
pay it
you
forward.
You got me thinking of. I love it, man. Matt, I love chatting with you. I really enjoy what you're doing, and thank you for coming on the show. How can people find you, everyone? If you guys are not connecting with Matt when he gives you kind of his links, shame on you. This retired sergeant major will make you do a half a push-up. How can they find you, man?
On LinkedIn, Matthew H. Kemp. I'm the manager of operations at Dialed In Staffing and managing partner at Red 7 Strategy Group. You can search Red 7 Strategy Group on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's Red 7 Strategy Group on all 4.
There we go. And I'll make sure Red 7 Strategy Group and all the links will be in the show notes. But again, Matt, thank you for your service, my friend. Happy belated Veterans Day.
Appreciate that.
And just anytime you need anything, you let me know, my friend. But again, thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd love to do it again.
Hey, same here. If there's ever an opportunity to come your way. But everyone, again, this ends another amazing, I think it's amazing show. Well, you guys do too, because you keep downloading and watching. So, but again, until a couple of weeks, you guys be safe out there. You guys know, everyone knows how I sign off. I continue to pray that may God bless you, the listener and viewers. May God bless your family and friends and all living beings around. You take care, everyone. Be safe. See you later, Matt.
Bye.
All right.